Hey Josh. So the videos we did just before Christmas got lots of really good feedback on LinkedIn, which was great, and a lot of people clearly found your perspectives really useful. So we thought we'd record a few more and kind of expand the conversation around AI in general and specifically about its applications for market research and related fields. And Obviously, since we recorded the last videos, there's been a lot more activity, a lot more kind of discussion about Chat GPT in particular. And I've even seen a couple of companies starting to offer solutions which they say are based on Chat GPT. But I just wanted to clarify something with you because my understanding is there isn't actually a commercially available API for Chat GPT yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So OpenAI to date has not officially released any API. So what are available are unofficial APIs, and so these are tools which just community members have built, which are sort of going a little bit against the terms of what OpenAI is offering with ChatGPT. And so it is possible that there are platforms or companies that are using those unofficial APIs. But sort of the risk there is that it is against the terms, so they could be cut off sort of at any moment. It's also possible that maybe some companies are talking about ChatGPT, but they might really just be using other APIs which are available from OpenAI. So
Mhm.
GPT-3, for example, is already available. They might be using those models.
Yeah, okay. So kind of riding the wave of Chat GPT makes sense.
Yeah, and,
So
and
yeah,
I should add,
yeah.
at some point, it's very likely or almost certain that OpenAI will release an API for ChatGPT, or there's a lot of conjecture that they're using ChatGPT to collect a lot of data, and then using that, they'll train a new model, and then that will be released as an API. So we
Okay.
can expect that will happen at some point, but
Uh,
right now there's sort of no official announcement.
okay. Interesting. But yeah, obviously there are other large language models available. It's not just Chat GPT, and as you say, OpenAI. There's previous versions of their model, and in fact, we spoke about that a bit last time about how with our own conversational AI Inca, we incorporate GPT-3, which is OpenAI's predecessor to Chat GPT, and you talked about how the NLP team at Next Intelligence have had to do a lot of augmentation and training on top of GPT-3 to create conversational AI that's effective for asking people questions in market research. So I just wondered, I mean, you said it's highly likely that Chat GPT or something similar will become commercially available. Do you anticipate that a similar level of augmentation and training of the NLP plus application and market research expertise is still going to be needed with Chat GPT to make it effective for asking questions in market research?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is I don't think we really need to anticipate. We already have a pretty good idea. So our team has, of course, been experimenting with ChatGPT since the day it was released. And in some ways, we've been kind of blown away with a lot of its capabilities. But there's still a very strong indication that instilling a deep understanding of context is still critical to generating effective and relevant market research questions. And actually, interestingly enough, sort of despite some of the improvements that it has over GPT-3, in some ways it could actually be less capable in certain respects. So one of the things that I'm referring to there is that ChatGPT has been specifically trained for its capacity for dialogue, and in particular for zero-shot dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So what that's referring to is the fact that you can kind of just tell it to act in a certain way, and you don't need to give it any examples. And that's one of the things that's really blowing people away is you just say, for example, act like a market researcher and then ask a question, and then it's able to ask a question. But that there's sort of a trade-off there. And so one of the things that it's not as good as GPT-3 is learning from examples. So if you actually give it explicitly, if you give it a few examples and then you ask it to sort of emulate that, that's something that's called in-context learning. And it's actually less effective than some other models in context learning. So that's kind of one of the risks or the trade-off is you can say, okay, please act in this particular way, act as though you're a market researcher with these particular objectives. But then you kind of just have to hope or rely on what it's going to produce. And you can't necessarily give it explicit examples to learn from, or you can, but it's not going to be as effective at learning from those. I'll
Okay.
also give a specific example of where it definitely still needs context in order to ask good questions, because that's kind of just a universal fact that might not be immediately apparent. But for example, if we asked ChatGPT to act like a market researcher and show it a research conversation where maybe you have the interviewer saying, "Why do you buy groceries from Walmart?" And the respondent replies with, "Because I can't afford other stores." So this is coming from a real prompt that we provided to ChatGPT. And it came up with the follow-up question: do you have any specific financial challenges that make it difficult for you to shop at other stores, or is it just a general affordability issue? So in some ways, this is a great question, right? Like this is really getting deep into what it takes to understand who this person is and what their problems are. It's just really not relevant to the particular objectives of that market research project. So I think that's a really good example of where it still needs to have sort of that understanding of what the objectives are.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah, and not really. If you were sitting in the back room and a moderator asked that question in a focus group, you probably wouldn't be very happy with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. So I guess it's still kind of leaving quite a lot to chance if someone tried to use kind of ChatGPT kind of out of the box, and there still is that need to augment and train the models to kind of make it effective and bake in market research expertise.